Google's new Chromebook, the Pixelbook Go, well, it isn't out yet. I mean, it's leaked and we've got stuff that we expect to see from it and a handful of things we don't know anything about with it. And all of that data can kind of inform us on what Google's planning with this Chromebook. And unfortunately, some people have already come out and said that they're kind of sad about the direction Google's going with just a clamshell device this time around. But I think if we look at it from the perspective of the Nexus and Pixels and other hardware Google has made in the past, we can form some conclusions about where Google is going with this particular Chromebook. So let's talk about it. Today's video is brought to you by NordVPN. They're the VPN of choice for Chromebook users and iOS users, Android users, Windows users, just users in general, because they're awesome at what they do, keeping your browsing secure, whether you're at home or on the go. If you'd like to learn more about their service, head over to chromeunbox.com/NordVPN. So in order to get to this eventual point of what I think Google is doing with this particular Chromebook, we need to go all the way back to Google's early beginnings in hardware, and not when they were making hardware, but when they were partnering with other manufacturers to make their own Nexus line of devices. And if you don't remember Nexus phones, that's okay. A lot of us do. A lot of us that were tech enthusiasts and or developers remember Nexus phones because it was Google's way of introducing new hardware. Those hardware pieces were always the ones that got the latest version of Android. And so each year we would kind of eagerly await Google to release a new Nexus device and see what new thing they were going to try to do, or see what new part of Android they wanted to highlight with the hardware. And usually after they would do that, the rest of the industry would kind of pick up on it and start doing it in their own phones. Well, fast forward a few years and we don't really need Google to play that part anymore. We don't need Google to go and set the trends for us. We don't need Google to go and show all the hardware manufacturers how to do the latest, greatest things. They're already doing it. Pick any of the manufacturers now that are out there: Huawei, Oppo, OnePlus, Samsung. There's tons of them, and they're all doing unique things, and they're all pushing the industry forward on their own. And because of that, I think Google has decided now to transition out of the Nexus platform, and a couple years ago we were introduced to the Pixel platform. So when Google kind of transitioned and moved into the Pixel platform, they made a big change in the way that they go about making hardware. First up, they were kind of making hardware for themselves-ish, and they were still partnering with other manufacturers to make it, but it was all Google branded stuff. So the Nexus line, you had Samsung and HTC and other phones that still would have some branding influence. Now with Pixel, you don't have that. But I think the bigger departure was Google deciding not to feel like they needed to push the industry forward anymore and decided that they wanted to make good phones that would sell in the marketplace. And while some would argue that they haven't accomplished that yet, I would argue that they haven't sold a ton of phones at this point. They're trying to make themselves into a real phone like hardware manufacturer at this point. And I think with the Pixel 3a and 3a XL, they've kind of accomplished that. So with those phones and the upcoming Pixel 4, which we expect to be relatively popular, assuming it's priced decently, Google is finally, about 4 years in, starting to catch their stride a little bit. And we're not seeing them make phones that have these breakthrough things in them that are going to try to push the market forward. Sure, Project Soli and its little hand gesture stuff is going to be cool and could introduce a whole new UI change, but that's not like an inherent part of Android. That's not something where they're trying to get Android to this next level. They're just iterating Android and polishing it and refining it. And that's kind of what you're seeing with the Pixel phones. Like, they're not making these massive changes each year. They're just kind of refining the product and making something better so that they can compete in the marketplace that they helped curate. So take all that same logic and that kind of roadmap, and now let's apply it to Chromebooks. And let's look at the early Google Chromebooks, the ones that Google made for themselves. And those would be the 2013 and 2015 Google Chromebook Pixels. Both of these devices were introduced into a market that wasn't ready for them. Nobody had made a $1,000 Chromebook, much less I think a $1,300 Chromebook when the first one came out. And people looked at it and were like, this is just a browser. Chrome OS isn't ready for this. It wasn't optimized for touch input. It wasn't optimized for the high resolution of those screens. It just wasn't ready for those products at all. And Google didn't care. They didn't make it to try to sell a bunch of them. They made it to make a point, to show other manufacturers, look, here's what you can do with high-end hardware with Chrome OS. And as we continue to build Chrome OS and we make it better and better to work with all these pieces, you're going to kind of see how it all comes together and works really well on high-end hardware. The same applies to the Pixelbook. Even though right now most people would say, yeah, the Pixelbook's great. I love my Pixelbook. When it launched, people weren't so happy with it. It was too expensive. Android apps didn't work that well on it. Pen support was kind of all over the place. And again, kind of like Google tends to do, they launched a product kind of before it was ready. and before its own time. Now, back then, convertible Chromebooks weren't the norm. Touchscreen Chromebooks were kind of hit or miss, and there were a couple that had pens with them. But Pixelbook showed up and said, hey, okay, here we're going to make all of this stuff normal. Convertibles are going to be normal. Touchscreens, normal. Android apps, normal. Pen support, normal. And now we're in a position where it's not odd at all to see a convertible Chromebook come out. Sometimes it honestly kind of feels odd when they're not convertible or it's not a tablet or a detachable. And so the Pixelbook did the same thing the Chromebook Pixels do. It showed up, it set the stage, set the bar in a different place than it was before. It wasn't really well received, didn't sell a ton, but it moved the market forward. Then we move on to the Pixel Slate, which launched last year. And again, this was a device that launched and was not met with a lot of critical acclaim. It has gotten better over the course of a year, but I still have a hard time recommending it. And I don't know that I really love this device, but it has moved the market forward because we're at a position now where we're getting ready to see a ton of tablets and detachables launch into the market that a year ago, manufacturers probably wouldn't have tried this. But since the Pixel Slate's kind of come out, set the bar, and shown everyone how to go about doing it, they can go about doing it better. And so again, we see Google launching a product that maybe nobody really wants that much, but they know where their platform is going, and they created hardware to kind of showcase that transition. So now we come to the Pixelbook Go, which has kind of made a full circle and is coming out as what seems to be just a touchscreen clamshell Chromebook. And it's got a lot of people wondering, why does Google's doing that? Why not push into something else? Even though I don't know what else Google would go about doing, but why not just make a Pixelbook 2? Why not make a convertible with pen support? Why not do all of these other things? Why not experiment with something else? It feels like they're playing it safe. It feels like they're just making something iterative this year. And I think that's exactly what they're doing. My prediction is with the Pixelbook Go, Google is now going to move into a season where they're making Chrome OS hardware from more of a Pixel mindset versus the Nexus mindset. And what I mean by that, again, is with Android, they had the Nexus program, they were pushing barriers and trying to set the stage and move everything forward. But with Pixel, they're just iterating. They're trying to perfect a product and make something that's great, that's going to sell well, that's actually going to be a marketable product instead of being something that's experimental. And so if you take that same approach, you can't go and just try a new form factor all of a sudden. You can't go and just try to do something new that pushes the market forward, because honestly, the market's maturing. We're seeing all sorts of different Chromebook manufacturers make all sorts of different form factors, and ones that are expensive, ones that are cheap, and ones that are great, and ones that are terrible. There's all kinds of variation in the Chrome OS ecosystem now. Google doesn't have to go and set that bar anymore. They can now go, hey, you know what? We know how to make a really good clamshell Chromebook. 2013 and 2015 Pixel, those were really good Chromebooks. Why don't we iterate on this idea? Why don't we make just a great Chromebook that is a great Chromebook experience, figure out a way to get the price down just a little bit, and I'm hoping that Google does that, and deliver this thing, market around it, and actually try to sell the dang thing one time. Because I don't feel like Google's ever made a Pixelbook or a Chromebook or a Pixel Slate or a Chromebook Pixel that they actually positioned in a way that it was gonna sell a bunch. And I think there's a chance they could do that with the Pixelbook Go if they continue taking a Pixel approach instead of a Nexus approach this year. But guys, that's it for this one. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Hit the subscribe button down below, and don't forget to hit the notification bell if you'd like to be alerted when we make new videos just like this one. Until next time, we'll see you.